Hola amigos, ¿qué tal? Stuart here from Spain Speaks with an update video today. Bit of a feedback video, let's say. Go through some of the comments, some of the opinion there, and also a bit of an update on what's happening around the country at the moment. As you can see, I am again outside. The sun is shining today. It's a little bit cold, hence the winter garb. Maybe I've gone a little bit over the top with the thickness of this jacket, but it's a little bit cold today, so better to be safe than sorry. But I need to get a bit of fresh air. Been stuck inside the last few days, of course, and always good to get outside, breathe fresh air, and enjoy the outdoor weather. And that is one of the characteristics of this part of the world. It does get cold, but the sun normally shines. So even in the middle of winter, when the temperature doesn't really get above 8, 9, 10 degrees, you can still get a sunny day, go outside and practice some outdoor activities. So I'll put that down as a positive of living in this part of Spain. So what's been happening? Well, as we know, the Prime Minister announced on Sunday the state of alarm. We spoke about this in yesterday's video, some of the things that you can and can't do now in Spain. So for example, that night curfew all over the country except for the Canary Islands. So every part of Spain now has a night curfew in place. The time the curfew begins depends where you are. So for example, in Catalonia, I think it begins at 10 p.m. and finishes at 6 a.m. But here in Madrid, it doesn't start until 12 midnight, and other places around the country as well starting at different times. And that's one thing that the Prime Minister did say when he announced the curfew, that it was going to be from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. but the autonomous communities or the regional governments here in Spain had the power to change that time either side by 1 hour. So for example, Catalonia starting at 10 o'clock and Madrid starting at 12 o'clock and going through to 6 in the morning. And as we know, some of the other changes that he mentioned were social gatherings have to be limited to 6 people, both inside and outside. So it doesn't matter whether you're having an outdoor do or an indoor do, you can only get together with 6 people. And of course, he also announced mobility restrictions, but those are in the hands of the regional governments, in the autonomous community governments. And I think yesterday 3 autonomous communities said that they were going to close their borders. So as we know, Navarra has closed its borders in recent times, La Rioja as well, but yesterday Asturias, the Basque Country and Aragon said that they were going to close their borders, so nobody's allowed to go in or out of those areas unless you have a justified reason or you are a resident in those areas and you are returning. However, one of the things that he did mention is that people are allowed to travel through those closed areas. So let's say, for example, here in Madrid I needed to go to Catalonia. I could travel through Aragon on my way to Catalonia, but I wouldn't be allowed to stay in Aragon. I could get petrol there, maybe I could buy something to eat, but I wouldn't be allowed to stay in that particular area of Spain. And that is the same in Asturias and the other places that I just mentioned. And there are going to be more places closing in coming days and coming weeks, because as I mentioned yesterday, we have public holidays coming up and some places are going to close in order to stop people traveling to those areas to enjoy the long weekends. And I think that's the plan behind the decision there in Asturias, to stop people coming in and spending the long weekend there. So at the moment you can travel around the country, but there are places closing down, and I think there's going to be more closures in coming days. So for example, maybe the Madrid community is going to close down. Maybe Castilla-La Mancha is going to close down because they don't want people traveling around the country without a justified reason. Now, I saw somebody in the comments section say that you can travel around the country with no restrictions. That's true at the moment, except for those areas that I just mentioned. So if you're in a motorhome, there's a few people now coming down to Spain in motorhomes and traveling around the south of Spain, but be warned that those autonomous communities or even regions within inside the autonomous communities could close down. So maybe a province in Andalusia is going to close its borders. Maybe a province in Castilla-La Mancha is going to close its borders. For example, Toledo, maybe Ciudad Real, maybe Guadalajara. So be aware of that. People are being warned against traveling. If you are coming down from the north of Europe and you're planning to go to a specific destination and spend the next 3 months there, which I know a lot of people plan to do, I don't think there's going to be a problem to do that. but you're not going to be able to move around to different places, or at least that's what I think is going to happen. Now, as I also mentioned yesterday, the plan that the Prime Minister has is to keep this state of alarm in place for the next 6 months. However, that's met a bit of opposition from the opposition parties. The leader of the main opposition party, the PP, yesterday said that he thinks that 8 weeks is a more reasonable number, and then they can assess what to do after that. But they seem to be reluctant to grant this power to the government for the next 6 months without any type of control. And in my opinion, I think it's a good idea to assess the situation after shorter periods. And of course, if you can lift the state of alarm, then that's fantastic. But if not, keep it in place. And somebody also asked in the comment section if these curfews are going to be in place for the next 6 months as well. And the answer to that is that nobody knows. It depends on the health situation in each particular area. So that magical number is 250 cases per 100,000 to have that maximum alert level. And of course, there are 4 different stages, and if the numbers come down, then of course those restrictions can be lifted. It doesn't depend on the state of alarm. So let's say, for example, and I'm hoping this happens, that Madrid gets its numbers down to around the 100 mark, or down to around where the Canary Islands are at the moment, and then the governments have the ability to lift the restrictions. So it's not going to be a hard 6-month curfew. It's going to depend on the health situation around the country and if it improves. Now, I saw a few people in the comment section say, why is it only a night curfew? Why is it from 12 midnight, for example, here in Madrid to 6 in the morning? Why isn't it earlier? Well, the government seems to think that quite a large number of cases are being caused by nighttime activity, whether that's partying, whether that's family gatherings. That's what they seem to think, and that's why they have decided to cut down on nightlife. People can still go about their day-to-day fairly normally. You can go to work, you can go to school, you can take the metro, you can take a bus, you can go about your day-to-day. This is not a strict lockdown like we had earlier in the year. I'll say that again, this is not a strict lockdown like we had at the beginning of the year. People think that we might get one in the near future. I don't know. Again, it depends on the health situation, but these are the times that we are living, and the curfew, or the night curfew, is what the government has decided to impose. And as I mentioned before, to stop people traveling unnecessarily around the country. That is the objective. Now, I said yesterday that it's a last roll of the dice, and it seems to be the case. The government hasn't ruled out stricter measures in the future, but they're going to see how this pans out over the next few weeks and see if the situation gets better. And to give you an idea of this nighttime activity, the police apparently at the weekend busted 300 illegal parties in Madrid. So that's 300 that they found. How many more were there? I have no idea. But 300 illegal parties seems to be a bit excessive in my opinion. Now, the time change that we recently had seems to be a popular topic. We went from summertime to wintertime at the weekend, and of course a lot of people not happy about that change. They prefer those afternoon hours of sun, and there's even talk about next year scrapping that time change and staying permanently on summertime here in Spain. Now, I wouldn't have a problem with that if Spain was on the correct time zone. As we know, Spain apparently is not on the correct time zone. We should be on the same time zone as Portugal or the UK, but we're not. We should be on Canary time as well. In the Canary Islands, they are 1 hour less than here in mainland Spain, and I think that we should be on that time zone. If we were, I wouldn't have a problem staying on summertime permanently, but I think we have to get onto the proper time zone before we start making even further changes to the times here in Spain. I like to wake up early in the morning and have a bit of light around so I can do activities like running or going for a ride on my bike, or even going for a walk outside, or just having daylight in those earlier hours of the day. I don't really care about them so much in the afternoon when my day starts to wind down, but it's those morning hours when I'm most active, and I like to have a little bit of daylight instead of pitch black. But as I said, that's just me. I think the majority of people in this country prefer those later afternoon hours. Somebody said that that's one of the reasons why tourism is such a success here, because people have those afternoon hours of sun where they can sit on the terraces overlooking the Mediterranean Sea having a drink. So those long afternoons here in Spain, important for a lot of people. So no doubt in the new year we'll have news on what's going to happen regarding summertime in 2021. And finally, I'm just going to reply to a comment that I saw. Somebody called me naive. Well, actually, they spelt the word naive N-I-E-V-E, which gave me a bit of a laugh because in Spanish that word is nieve, which means snow. So I'm a bit confused whether they meant naive or nieve, but I'm presuming that they meant naive. And this is the only piece of advice that I'm going to give that person, that if you are going to call somebody naive, it's probably a good idea to learn how to spell that word and not make a mistake like that. And this particular comment had 26 likes, so I presume that that's 26 people out there that also understand that the word naive is spelled N-I-E-V-E. But it's not. So check it out in the dictionary, and if you're going to call people words like that, make sure you know how to spell them. And I think this person also said that I should wake up to what's going on. Now I'm just going to state my point here again. The objective of this channel is not to spread ideas, is to not to talk about the political reasons, is to not to talk about the ideological reasons, is not to talk about conspiracy theories or what people think is really going on in the world at the moment. We've currently got a health crisis and governments are acting accordingly. That's why they're shutting things down. That's why they're bringing in curfews. And the point of this channel is to inform people what those changes are and how they are going to affect their day-to-day in this country. Everything else for me is irrelevant, and I'm not going to do my head in on theories which are pretty hard to substantiate. So that's where I sit with my views on this channel. But hey, feel free to think what you like, but don't expect me to go along with you. On that note, I'll start to wrap the video up. Questions and comments, please leave them in the section below. Debate the situation out as you normally do. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. I'll see you in the next one. Hasta luego.